welcome to another episode of Two Fun Guys Talking Food Plots, a podcast dedicated to helping hunters grow better food plots with less work, less equipment, and better food choices so landowners will have the most attractive food plots in their area that will hold deer and last longer into the hunting season. My name is VanderVeen of Strategic Habitat, and my co-host is Bradh Harper of Harper Growing Solutions, both based in West Michigan. In this episode, Bradh and I talk about how you can still put your food plots in overdrive this month before the season starts, and a very important bit of info on what can happen if you don't rinse or clean your spray tanks between different types of spray applications, and the best way to store any leftover liquid Plot Doctor products you may have on the shelf for next year. Plus, some big changes Bradh will be making next year to make ordering or picking up product a lot more efficient and convenient across the food plotting world. So without further ado, let's jump right into the call with Bradh. Hey Bradh, how you doing?
Hey, not bad.
Real good. Are you getting close to winding up another food plot planting season, or are you still going strong with guys down south?
We are going very strong. I thought I was going to be caught up here probably, 8-9 days ago.
Yeah.
And so we're plugging away, slowly but surely catching up. It's better than the probably 20 to 23 days it was at the worst, but we're getting there.
Okay. Wow. What have you been hearing this year, Bradh? You've been hearing about, a lot of repeat customers, a lot of first time, a lot of both. I mean, you getting a lot of good feedback?
Yeah, I want to say on average, probably no joke, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 guys that use it are coming back. I got just so many guys that I have such a good relationship with now. It's funny when we're, fulfilling stuff off the website, you look at their information, and most of them are returning buyer, and I see the name and I remember, kind of where they're from, kind of place their food plot and their soil sample. And there's just so many guys from Michigan too that, hey, I want to come get my stuff next week, put it together for me, you know what I need. And it's just kind of the usual, and throw the seed and stuff on a pallet and they cut care of it. So
That's nice.
That's pretty cool when you really create those relationships with those guys, and that part's a lot of fun.
Right. So are you finding that a lot of guys are wanting to spray some food plots here in September?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say probably way more than normal, just because of the rain, or should I say the not so much rain. I want to say the last time that we had a good rain would have been the first week of August. So anyone that did not, get those plots in before that, they've just been kind of waiting it out. We haven't had a drop in 3 weeks. And then now I want to say that was last night or 2 nights ago now, we only had 500s, and a bunch of guys do rye and stuff. And I don't think that looks very good. I'm not sure when the next chance is, but just because of the lack of rain and everything else going on, I know guys are trying to layer rye, and I've had more people, especially even from Michigan, than normal, wanting to throw a foliar application on, just because everything's, I'm going to say, less than ideal going into mid-September here, and kind of getting fairly late to the point to where it's almost too late.
So are most guys wanting to plant or spray brassicas?
Probably 50-50. I'm getting just as many calls of guys planting, like a grain or a grain mix, or that tried planting a new clover plot, and it's just struggling so bad. They're trying to do whatever they can because no one's getting any rain. They're just doing what they can. Hey, this is what I got. They're sending me pictures, and what can I do? And I wish I could sell you rain in a bottle, but as of right now, I wouldn't even spray that with foliar, just because their clover is basically brown and a half-inch tall, and there's not much we can do at that point. I know a lot of the state got some rain, but there's a ton of area up north that we just totally missed that whole storm the last couple of times, and we've been really struggling this summer.
Yeah, got a client up in the Boyne City area, and I'm not kidding you. When we started getting a lot of rain in July and August, he was still missing them every time they were going north or south of them, or fizzling out before they got there. So really, really extremely dry up there this year. in southern Michigan, we've got some things going there. Man, we've been getting timely rains since I think around 4th of July. It's been really pretty good growing season the last couple months.
That's awesome. Yeah, that Boyne City all the way down to right about me is really struggling. I had way too many guys, way more than I'd like, that planted spring plots and frost seeded stuff, and none of that came up. And I know everybody got that one really good rain at the end of June. I don't know. I know we got one other rain this summer, but you're talking 2 rains since April, and just a lot of food plot failures all along that strip, like you say, all the way up to Boyne. And all my Ludington guys are in the same spot. And it's been a tough one for over here, I know. And then you look at, our guys in the Thumb, and they were flooded out for a while there. So it's definitely quite the difference just across the state even.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, the guys in the Thumb have really been getting, almost drowned it out there for a while. But what can a guy do if if he's got brassicas that are 3 to 4 inches maybe or less, and they're kind of struggling? It looks like we do have some rain coming Tuesday. With something in that situation like grains, and then you got your grains, oats, rye, peas, that type of thing, and then you on the other side of the coin you've got brassicas. What can guys do as far as another spray application to help themselves out?
Yeah, right now is you're probably got another week or so to make this happen, but right now you can still get a foliar application in to where we're putting a little bit of nitrogen, a little bit of phosphorus, a little bit of potassium. You're getting that carbon in there to get one last good chunk of growth, one last push. And especially if you have any deficiencies, if that plant is turning any sort of yellow, any sort of purple, you do have time to fix that yet. But the time is definitely running down. So if you can get out there in the next, 7, maybe 10 days and get a spray out there, you're going to be able to kind of correct any deficiencies you have and or get one last really good push of growth out there on those food plots. And that really goes across the board, whether that is brassicas or that is some sort of grain or clover, what have you. It's just that time of year to where, hey, if we need to try to push it, you still got a little bit of time to do that, but the time is definitely running out.
Okay. Even like medium red clover and a chicory blend?
Absolutely. If it's not doing what you want, and if it doesn't look like you want, and it's not nice and lush green, you still have time to fix that.
Yeah. Okay.
And I want to say right now, you almost got the west side that's turning a little colors because of drought, and you got the east side that's probably turning the same color because of too much rain. We can still do a good job as far as correcting that, and at least trying to make the best out of that situation that we can, regardless of the situation. So you do still have some time for a foliar application. Timing on the liquid nitrogen up north, at least in Michigan, I think that's run out. I wouldn't really recommend guys to spray the nitrogen right now, just because there is some slow release in there that you're not going to get the full benefit of that product at this time. On average, you're probably looking at the very last week in August in order to get the full benefit of that product. I mean, you are going to get some fast acting response out of that, but with that product being kind of 50-50 of fast acting and slow release, at least the liquid end, you're not going to benefit 100% from that. But I know a lot of guys are going out with urea and kind of hoping for rain, and that's always one of those things you really cross your fingers, and you better wash your truck when you do that too.
Yeah, exactly. So guys that need something like that, are you just saying just foliar? I mean, are you adding anything else to it or no?
I told a few guys today that if it was me, I'd throw urea because they wanted some nitrogen. It was one of those things. I don't really know if they needed it. They could probably get away without it and just a little bit of liquid foliar. But, if you want nitrogen or you really need nitrogen at this time, urea or AMS would be my preferred method, just because it's not going to burn like urea if we don't get the rain, which the weatherman normally isn't, right? And I'd rather try to go out with that and be a little safer. But if you needed N or wanted it, that would be your best bet at this time. And then if you were getting any other sort of deficiencies as far as potassium or phosphorus that A liquid application of something like the Plot Doctor foliar would be your best bet at this time.
So how many quarts per acre are you figuring for something like that?
On average, right now, it's just 1 to 2 quarts.
Okay.
It doesn't take much because that's going to get right into the plant right away and go to work. So, even when you get to the next, it's September 10 or 12 and you might have some deficiencies, that's where that stuff really shines, because as soon as you spray that out, that's getting in the plant and going to work and working on correcting that, compared to that granular just takes so much time to work its way through the soil and get through the roots and then plant, that we can do a lot faster and more efficient job as a liquid foliar.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say that, your liquid foliar, spraying it on something like a brassica at this time of year is like, it's almost like a syringe and injecting it right into the veins.
That's a really good analogy. I like that. I'm going to have to use that.
Now, I got done a couple weeks ago spraying some herbicide, prepping a field for a last minute planting of switchgrass, which actually did turn out successful, by the way. We got it in at the last minute, according to Roger up in Canada. After we were done, I really rinsed out that tank because I sprayed Liberty and whatnot. So are you finding that guys are hurting themselves by not rinsing out a tank properly? Or, how would you recommend rinsing out a tank, rinsing out the lines the best way after you spray herbicide before you put on your last foliar application?
Awesome point. So if you're going from spraying a herbicide to then like spraying the liquid lime and the foliar and the calcium on the ground at planting, I mean, that's one thing to where we don't have to be as diligent. I still like to be, but if you're going from glyphosate application to, maybe something happened, you couldn't get that out at plants, or somehow you're coming in and those plants are 2 or 3 inches tall when you're spraying everything, or just going straight from that to a pure foliar application of fertilizer, it is going to be incredibly crucial to rinse that tank. Now, in my opinion, whenever you get done, I like to fill that tank basically all the way up with water, let that agitate, recirculate, and then I'm going to run a bunch of it through the nozzles. That way you're kind of flushing out your hoses, and that way when you get done, there's not much left, if anything. And most of the time, that's all that it takes. Now, having a good tank cleaner never hurts, because that way you can kind of scrub that thing from the inside out, if you will. But if you just run that water, that's going to be huge. And we actually had a few incidents where guys went from spraying Roundup to just doing foliar applications. And even though the tank was empty, and I think they threw just a little bit of water in there, kind of sloshed it around, and it does not take much residue to mix with our fertilizers, just because of how readily available they are to the plant. They're going to get right in there and go to work. That if they pull a little bit of glyphosate residue with it, you are going to end up with some issues. And on the bright side, the guy that did that called me the other day, he knows exactly what he's using for horse nettle and pigweed now. So we did solve that problem on the bright side, but that's definitely something to think about. And even when you're spraying our lime and fertilizer, if you take that extra time at the end, flush that thing out, you will be thankful down the road, not only from having to build up and not having to scrub that thing, or, kind of worst case scenario of actually going and getting damage on your food plots because of herbicide residue.
Okay. Yeah, just a little bit of residue in the bottom of the tank mixed with that foliar. I mean, it really is going to get injected, almost like inhaled by those plants. And yeah, I could see where that would be an issue.
And I say that because if you're just doing a soil application, yeah, that little bit of residue is not going to necessarily hurt anything, or if you're crimping, that actually might help kill stuff. But it's like you got done spraying herbicide, so flush that thing out, because the next step, just clean that thing out. And I think that's going to also increase the longevity of the tanks and the sprayers and the hoses and everything else by doing that, which that stuff's not cheap anymore either.
That really does make a lot of sense, Brad, because this year, when I planted corn, I came back about a month later to spray the horse nettle that was coming back. And I actually sprayed, fertilizer along with it, the foliar to give it a good, shot of nitrogen on the corn. But I put the herbicide, the Liberty herbicide, in with the foliar at the same time. I've never smoked horse nettle like I did on that application. That stuff, it was dead in no time.
I believe it. And just for the record, I don't always advocate for that. I'm just throwing that out. Yes, that's a fact. I don't doubt it. Like I said, that stuff just gets in there, and it really gets in the plant so fast that whatever it is carrying with it, I mean, and that's where too, we kind of changed our train of thought with a few of this been done a really good job. We switched our train of thought to where, hey, we're just going to get into those weeds so fast. We're going to get a really good feel. So that's kind of been an interesting section that we've gone through this year.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. I've been dealing on this one property, with some pretty nasty weeds, a lot of mare's tail, a lot of horse nettle. I know before it would always be like, add crop oil, add AMS, add the Liberty, just to make it a hot mix. But man, now I'm starting to think all I got to do is just put in the Liberty herbicide plus some of your fertilizer and call it good. Because man, that stuff really worked. It smoked it big time.
I want to say, kind of cut a bunch of that out and be a little more efficient. Plus, we're still getting some benefit to the soil with that.
Exactly. So we've got some extra product, that we normally make sure that we order enough from you, so that we don't run out at the end of the year. And we invariably, maybe have a few jugs of this and a couple jugs of that left over. How do you recommend storing this stuff over the winter, especially up in these northern climates, in Michigan? What's the best procedure for that, Brad?
That's a really good question. The liquid lime, it almost doesn't matter what you do, but first and foremost, with all the products, I say don't let it freeze, in which I say that for every single product, whether it's a herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, fertilizer, don't let it freeze. Even if it says on the jug that it can, I don't like to let it freeze, because we've seen so many different things with all my customers and all over the place. I think as soon as that freezes, that changes that chemical makeup, and it's just not the same after that. So if you can put it in any place that it doesn't freeze, you're going to be winning. But let's talk about liquid lime. It almost doesn't matter what you do because of how that product is made and everything else, which we're actually making some headway on some interesting changes there. But as of right now, that thing, it basically is liquid lime. So as that sits, it kind of settles, and you almost end up, which I know you had some instances with that this year, you end up with almost like a block of pure calcium carbonate lime in the bottom of that jug.
Right. That was actually in one of those 25-gallon barrels.
Okay. Yep. And what we tell guys is, hey, whatever jug that's in, whether it's a 1 gallon, 2.5, a drum, cut that top off, add some water to it, let it soak. You might have to add some more water to it. But if you hit that with a paddle mixer on a drill, after you do that for a few days of adding water and just letting it sit there and saturate, it will go into solution fairly well, to where it's not like it's a waste. It's just not going to be the same exact consistency as before, but it still has the same effectiveness, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
So we'll just go down the line. The Pot Doctor Dry, that doesn't matter what you do with it. Throw it outside, leave it in the snow. It don't matter. It's going to be good to go as long as there's no moisture that gets in there and that top's on fine. So that's not an issue. The Pot Doctor Foliar, I still don't like to let it freeze. And worst case scenario, you're going to have to add some water in the bottom of that jug. Once it's empty, shake it up, pour it out, add some water, shake it up, pour it out, because you will get that carbon that kind of settles on the bottom, but that's not an issue. The Pot Doctor Calcium, that will kind of settle as well a little bit, not near as bad as the lime, but a little worse than the foliar. But that's still the same concept, to where, pour out what you can, add some water, shake it up, pour it out, add some water, shake it up. And at the end of the day, both them jugs are going to be spotless when you get done by doing that. And it's not going to lose its effectiveness. The biggest one is just that lime, because it does kind of settle and it does kind of form a brick at the bottom. just because of how that product is and how concentrated it is, that there's not much getting away from it at this point in time.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a little storage area on a shelf, that I've got in my garage, and it never really freezes. I can leave a case of water out in my garage in the wintertime and it never freezes, even if it gets below zero.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'll do sometimes is on some of those jugs, like once a month, I'll just go over there and I'll just kind of shake it up a little bit, like the first of every month during the off season, you're good to go. And I've never had an issue.
No, that is perfect. And that literally is best case. And if you do that, then you'll never have any issues. You really won't. But I think the main thing that a lot of guys run into is the freezing point, because if you can just keep it from freezing, even if it settles, there's still a chance, even though it's an extra step or two, that you can still save it and utilize it. It's not like it's a waste.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as that freezes, just stuff does not react the same. And there's suspension agents in all those products, same. And you can even tell that with glyphosate.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I'll just tell you, Brad, I do have a couple of clients, that have used your products for the first time this year. I'll ask him, hey, how'd it go? What'd you think? Blah, blah, blah. And he says, yeah, it's plots kind of look like the same as it did last year when I used granular. But I will tell you that the one property that I've used your products on now for 4 years, it's been a big change, a real big change. And I think our buddy Jake is the same. He's been growing food on his property like nobody's business. He's never had food plots look like this before, crazy. So I really do think that you really can't just, use your products once, twice and expect, these big changes that we talk about, because I think it is a 2 to 3 year process when you really start to see the difference.
For sure. And when guys say, it looks about the same, and that's great in my opinion, because you just added all that carbon and did all those things that are a lot more beneficial than granular now with the same result. That means, I did my job with my recommendations, or, if you just kind of read the back of the jug and guessed on your amount, that's good, because that means we did a good job this first year, but now all that carbon's going to work. Everything else in that system is only going to build up from there. So if we can do that the first year, obviously we have hundreds of people that are like, oh my gosh, this is great. Never looked so great before. And that's awesome. But if a guy just says, yeah, it looks about the same as last year, I'm like, oh, awesome. That's great, because now we can only go up from there, because all that carbon's going to go to work. We're going to keep building. And like you say, by the time you get to year 2 and 3, then stuff's really going to explode. And then by the time we're at year 4 and 5, now we can start lowering those rates. We can start really utilizing the biology and all of our cover crops. And then that's slowly but surely going to start doing the work for us. And that's really the whole program. And the end goal is kind of making that change and making that switch in order to have that dirt working for us. So that's awesome. I like to hear that. And I just before I talked to you now, I seen that picture of Jake's seclusion mix, and holy smokes.
Yeah, that looked pretty appetizing. Even if you wanted to throw his food plot greens in a salad, I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Did you say that? Was that you?
Yeah.
That's what you said that, and I'm like, yeah, give me a bottle of ranch. I'll go out there for a little while.
Yeah. No, the other thing too about your products over time, Brad, is that some of these guys that have a lot of phosphorus tied up in the soil by using triple 19 every year, that some of that issue is going to start going away on its own too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And all that stuff will be realized obvious over time. We did some food plots up at a ranch up north, and we planted 14 acres and put that stuff in the tank, and you got a 20-foot boom, and we were done in no time. It was, instead of going over it with a spreader twice for 2 different products, that was great.
Absolutely. And that is kind of half the benefit out of that. It's a lot quicker, it's a lot easier. The convenience factor is definitely there for that. So I totally agree. And I love it myself. When I do get to plant food plots, it is nice just loading up the sprayer and going to do that. It is hard to beat.
Yeah. So any new things coming down the pike for next year, Brad?
New things, yes. Number one, we are tweaking the nitrogen. because from what we've seen, we had literally nothing but good results. But from what I've learned in the past, basically, let's just say 1 year, we've learned a couple things that we're seeing on the ag side. So I'm going to tweak that nitrogen in order to kind of pass that knowledge along to the food plot guys for what we are somewhat switching on the ag side. And we're getting added benefits from that, in which the end result is more amino acids. In order to put that into a super short conversation, when you add amino acid, nitrogen, you're basically skipping a step, so the plant doesn't have to work so hard to utilize that. And there's not really the negative effects that you get when you just dump a bunch of nitrogen on. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting. It's really cool. So we're tweaking the nitrogen a little bit, which is going to be awesome. And I'm going to say, as of right now, there's probably between 15 and 25 people that had used the Deer Detour and did not have any success at all with it.
Oh, okay.
So that's not bad for how much we've sold and all the other, results that we did have. So that's cool. But what we are coming out with for next year is a Deer Detour 2.0. The majority of people can still use the regular Deer Detour and be completely fine. There's no issues. It works great. But in those areas where, let's say you got a 1/4 acre or even a 1/2 acre food plot in the woods, like up north, let's say like by John, right? Mm-hmm. There's not much food anywhere. So when you put that brassica plot out there and there's not much other food around, what we've seen was that they didn't have the same result that we did maybe down by Jake, where there's a bunch of food, or down by me where you got row crops all over. Where if you spray that on ours, well, they can just walk literally 20 feet over and eat the neighbors, and that's not sprayed, so that's not a big deal. So we were seeing great results there. But in a lot of areas, there was a couple in New York, a couple in Maine, Illinois was one. I know actually Lincoln, he had some stuff where that didn't work at all. So I was kind of scratching my head and trying to figure that out. And I basically came to the conclusion that it's almost like a soil sample recommendation for lime. Each food plot is going to be completely different depending on its location, depending on what you're planting in that. And that's basically what we came up with. So we are coming out with a 2.0. We're running trials right now, and we have a couple out this summer. There's a few out this fall. We're going to run some more trials in the spring, but I'm hoping by next fall, I'll have enough data back that we're going to come out with that 2.0, and that's going to be a lot more concentrated and a lot stronger. And then that way too, there's still a ton of guys that are on the fence, whether they want to, that's kind of funny. They're on the fence if they want to buy a deer fence or not. But if that 2.0 does anything like I think it's going to, that should be cool. And that should work really well for the guys that struggled with either the original. When you have those plots in the middle of the woods with not much food around, that might be the ticket to go with the 2.0 rather than the original, because we did have some failures there. So we are playing with that, and that is going to be new next year. I just got to kind of figure out the exact recipe for going forward. So that's pretty neat. We're super excited about it. So far, it's been really great. I think we're onto something, and that's pretty exciting for us.
And for the guys that don't know what Deer Detour is, that is a liquid repellent.
Yes, thank you. We made a deer repellent that way for guys planting soybeans, brassicas, almost anything really, because I've had guys that planted clover that can't keep it. It just gets mowed down. So it's basically made, rather than having to buy a fence and put that up and take it down and all that hassle, that we can spray this liquid out and do a really good job keeping that plot to grow, in order to kind of with beans, get past those first couple leaf stages to where they're not going to die. Same thing with brassicas, that we can get past those first few leaves and not end up with just a food plot that's just bare dirt by the time hunting season comes around. It's really nice because you can apply it once and then let it go. You can apply it twice. I got guys that sprayed on their beans 3 different times and then let the deer go in and kind of have their way with it. So it's really cool that it's kind of really customizable. Deer densities and other food around really is the biggest impact, but it's a really neat product, and overall it's been a really good success so far for a lot of guys.
Yep. Well, might have to use some of that next year because we're going to be planting 60-inch row corn next year. And man, the corn this year just absolutely got destroyed when it was young. So
Hmm.
I think we might be able to benefit from that next year.
Absolutely. We actually had quite a few row crop guys on the ag side that switched over this year to that. And the one guy said he genuinely felt bad for his neighbor. He's like, I kind of feel like that's my fault. So that's when you hear those stories.
It seems like food plot season went by really, really fast, but yet when we were going through that drought, man, it seemed like it was taking forever for the next rain to come. Then once the rain came, oh man, quick, we got to get this done. We got to spray that. We got to, plant this. And before you know it, it's already Labor Day. It's crazy.
I know it. And actually, I will take a minute here I've been trying to be as transparent as possible. And we have just been flooded with stuff this year. And I appreciate everybody's patience because I'm basically the bottleneck in the whole situation as far as looking at soil samples and, looking at all these pictures guys text and email to us. So I want to say thank you to everybody. I want to say that I appreciate your patience because as we're getting, hundreds of phone calls and texts every day, we were definitely backed up a ways. And everybody's been really good about it. We've only had a few people that really got pretty mad over the deal, and I totally get that. But everybody else has been awesome with it, and I appreciate it, and I thank everybody. And I just wanted to kind of stay transparent with the whole deal, saying, hey, we are backed up. I'm doing what I can. And I just wanted to say that, again, and I can't say that enough to where I greatly appreciate everybody's patience. But one last thing, now that we talk about that I did want to touch on because of how late we were, probably the biggest question we've gotten the last month is the application timing of all those products. Because guys were getting on, whenever and ordering, and as we're 2 or 3 weeks behind, they were trying to get their product and, plant their food plots, let's say August 15th. Well, when they ordered August 7th and I was 2 weeks behind, it is what it is. So the biggest question we were getting was, can we still spray this stuff or can we still use it or how does that work? Well, all of our products go on like clover, chicory plots, alfalfa, perennials or annuals at any time, which is really nice and it makes those all versatile. So I'm hoping I can really help a bunch of people out by saying this now, that even if you might have missed your window that you thought because maybe something came up with the family and you couldn't get up to your property, or you thought it was going to rain but it didn't, so you didn't end up spraying it. There's a lot of different scenarios to where that just doesn't work. Well, that's not an issue whatsoever. Whether it's the lime, the foliar, the dry, the calcium, all of that stuff can go on at any time. So if you happen to plant and because I was slow and backed up or didn't get it shipped out in time, and let's say that you were a week late getting the product, well, you could still go out and spray that on, anything, whether that's brassicas, clover, a grain mix, radish, what have you. You can still go out and spray that even when that's an inch tall, 2 inches, 4, 6, 8, 12 inches. That doesn't matter. Obviously, the ideal time to get the lime and the dry and the calcium out is at planting, and I totally understand that, and that was my fault. But it's totally fine to get that out at any point throughout the growing season. The only thing that we say is that if you're spraying liquid lime, which I have to thank Jake for this because he was the one that really narrowed this down for us, was that if you're spraying liquid lime on up and established plots, whether that's an inch tall or 12 inches tall, we just like to dilute that a little more. So we can get away with like 15 gallons an acre on bare ground if you want to stay at that minimum, all the way up to 60 gallons if you wanted to go high. But when you're spraying established crops, we'd like to bump that up to at least 20, maybe even at least 25. Just because that lime was so thick, what had happened was we were kind of clogging the spores of those plants. As an analogy, because the lime was so thick, so much carbon, we were kind of clogging the spores of those plants, so it wasn't able to do photosynthesis. That plot didn't die or it wasn't terrible. It just took a minute till we got that rain, washed that off the leaves, and then they were able to kind of go back to normal. But when he sprayed that at that lower water per acre, it kind of did stunt that plot a little bit. So that's something that you're not out. You didn't miss your window. You can still get that on at any time. But if we are spraying established plots, whether that be 1 inch or 12 or more, we just like to dilute that whole tank by a little bit of water per acre, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Yeah, I never really thought of that, but no, good catch by Jake there. That's awesome. Yeah. I think guys probably appreciate your transparency on the bottleneck and all that. And I get it, totally get it. I mean, but again, that kind of goes to the fact that, word of mouth is spreading about this product, and guys are having good success. So you're getting a lot of people come back at the same time. I just like to see my clients have success, right? So never fun to hear from a client to say that, his food plot had failed for some reason. So
no, for sure. And I appreciate that. And yeah, we already have a bunch of big changes in the works, and we're constantly getting better at that. And, that was one of those things to where it was just, we didn't experience that before, and holy smokes.
yeah.
But we learned a lot. So it was good on our end, obviously bad on the other end too, but we're making a lot of big changes here, and I'm really looking forward to next year and not having to worry about a lot of those issues again. And we're definitely getting that fixed. So that should be good.
Well, hey, Brad, you might find yourself in the same position John was a couple of years ago, where he realized he had to build a bigger barn.
That's exactly where we're at. We're waiting to finish this year out, but then we will be officially moving. That's almost done now, finally. It was just one of those things that when I had to, basically work 20-hour days doing soil samples and on the phone, I didn't have much time to get stuff moved and finish that other place. But we are almost done with that. So next year we'll officially have a new place.
Wow.
A lot bigger, a lot more organized. So we're super excited about that. And we have a few new dealers that are coming in on the scene, helping us out as well. And we're really going to be expanding that this winter, which is going to be awesome for everybody, because shipping does not get any better. They still seem to just love throwing boxes of liquid lime around and breaking them, as well as the cost of shipping that stuff. So that's going to really benefit everyone, and we're working on it, and I appreciate everyone's patience. Like I said, I can't thank everybody enough, and including, you and Jake and John and Elliot and everybody. So we're definitely getting there. It was a really good year, and I'm glad that the guys that did get a few timely rains still had some good plots, and, everything worked out really well.
Yep. Well, I just want to wish everybody a really good hunting season this year. Hopefully, your food is going to last well past gun season. Seasonal opening day will be here before you know it, and we'll start to see a lot of hero picks posted. And I can never get enough of seeing clients, landowners, just friends of mine, just have a lot of success and holding some big antlers. That's the reason why we do all this stuff, right?
Absolutely. And that's where, you're about to see all the hard work everybody put in all year start paying off. And, like you said, I hope everybody's food is great and lasts, and I hope the screen stays strong and hold up, and I hope the hinge cuts make it and can feed those deer late in the winter. And there's a lot of work that's going to be showing itself here shortly. So that's the fun part, and watching the deer utilize everything that you just busted your butt all year on is that's the best.
Yep, you bet. All right, Brad. Hey, great catching up with you again, and hopefully, next spring we can, before the snow is gone, maybe we can already, get another podcast out there and get guys prepared and get them in that mindset about what's got to be done when, right?
No, absolutely. And I love these. Because with every single soil sampling guy that I talk to, I keep learning, and I know that you do the same with every property that you're on. And the more that we can do of these, the more we can help guys out. And I love it. And we get so much great feedback on it. So absolutely sign me up. We're already looking forward to next year. And I hope everybody has a good season, and best of luck to everybody.
You bet. All right. Well, good, Brad. Look forward again next year, and we'll talk to you later.
Awesome. That sounds good. Good catching up. Good to talk to you. Thank you.